So the thing that leads me to want to write a check is a spark. And the spark can be different. And in fact, is different with different founders. But I have this reaction like, oh my God, I have never seen anybody like this before. And it could be like, this is the greatest salesperson I've ever met. This is the greatest storyteller I've ever met. This is the most tenacious person I've ever met. This is the smartest person I've ever met. They're very different, but there's this ear that perks. And I'm like, holy cow. If I don't feel that, I usually don't want to, I almost never want to invest. The thesis behind that is if you think about how heroic it is to create a business in a proverbial garage with a co-founder and say, I'm going to reinvent the world. I'm going to reinvent society. I'm going to reinvent an industry. That's like borderline irrational.
Yeah.
And so my analysis over 40 years is the only people who actually reinvent the world have some Herculean ability in some dimension that's not normal. Otherwise, the chance you're going to reinvent the world rounds to literally zero.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be investing in zeros. So fundamentally, I need that spark or I won't write the check. Another way that does resonate with me is Balaji wrote this, he taught a class at Stanford called Startup Engineering, where he expressed this concept of an intellectual maze that later Chris Dixon cut and pasted into a blog. The founders who can walk you through the intellectual maze from starting to success instead of failure are very rare. And when you meet a founder who can literally draw that map, the treasure map for you, I would also invest in that.
Yeah, got it. Well, the good news is Chris won't hear this because he blocked me a long time ago on Twitter. So you don't have to worry about that the copy and paste thing. It's interesting. So is it some specific spike that just like is this totally intuitive to you? Is it something that you think can be imparted on people? Is it pattern matching over time? How do you think about that?
I don't know. It's definitely the hardest part of venture capital to teach. If I could teach it to more of my colleagues, I would. And if you develop this kind of spidey sense, I think you can be a successful investor, period. And you're ready to write your own checks.
Yeah.
So if someone shows this propensity, I would embrace them, fund them, give them money for their own fund, or try to recruit them here to Founders Fund. So it's pretty rare. You can teach some things around pattern matching. So for example, we recently funded a founder who's about 20 years old, who I met on a Zoom call. And my first reaction was like, oh my God, he's another Delian. It's like literally like another Delian.
That's a good thing.
So I called up Delian. I'm like, you have to talk to this guy. And he's like, why? And the idea sounded kind of crazy, but I'm like, this guy is literally you. And Delian didn't believe it. Then he started talking to him on the phone. He's like, oh my God, he really is like me.
That's so
I
funny.
found another Delian.
Oh, wow. That's yeah. Well, I mean, and that's a pattern matching experience. Was Delian, I mean, in general, is that an archetype or obviously people are one of one in that, but like, do you have a mental model for a lot of the people you go invest with or?
No, but when
you see it,
there's like a trait. So for example, let's talk about a well-known entrepreneur, Max Levchin.
Yeah, sure.
So I remember when I first joined PayPal, about 3 months later, Reid Hoffman came up to me and said, you know what's special about Max? No.
I feel like a lot, but I don't know where you're going with this.
He's like, Max is a first-rate business mind paired with a first-rate technologist, and in Silicon Valley, there's almost none of those.
Yeah.
And like this conversation happened in January 2000. January 2000 or January 2001. And so if I find someone who's a first-rate technologist and a first-rate business mind, I would definitely invest because now watching 20 years later, I'm like, you're right. There's about 5 of those people.
Yeah.
Or like Jack Dorsey is actually first-rate business mind, pretty first-rate technology mind, and a first-rate design mind.
Yeah.
Which is why he's had like ridiculous success. Is the Venn diagram of those 3 things doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
Maybe like Steve Jobs. Like there's not that many people who can do all 3.
Yeah, interesting. No, it's very unique traits in people.